Hello and welcome. Tonight we are going to be debuting a new podcast, new live Q&A. And we're going to call this on a regular basis is going to become The Path. And the path is going to be all topics related to your pathway with regard to youth baseball, youth athletics, obviously high school with regard to playing time options, and obviously college recruiting. I really want to get started tonight by introducing what I feel is a tremendous new sponsor, the Pocket Path. I have taken the initiative this year to really make sure that I was vetting, for lack of a better term, a lot of products that come across, that my sons have used or continue to use, products, and the Pocket Path, as well as the Rookie Trainer for the younger athletes, does promote a more efficient and effective arm path that promotes health, durability, sustainability for developing, proper arm care, proper arm path, not only for pitchers, for all throwing athletes. And that includes softball, by the way. So the path is going to be your information source, resource that you can, as parents, you know, really begin to because of the questions that I'm getting on a weekly basis are predominantly related to the high school process, the high school path, um, as well as college recruiting. So I felt it would behoove me to take a more positive approach, proactive approach with regard to all things related to the college recruiting path. And so tonight I'm going to discuss five topics that parents have been asking me. They've sent me questions. And so this is the other part of this process. The path is for you as parents as well as student athletes. Continue to send your comments and your questions. First and foremost, because I am going to select a winner once a month that is going to receive a pocket path or a rookie pocket path. And I will tell you that my youngest son, Tyler, to this day still uses the pocket path with regard to his training regimen, both out of season, off season, and in season. So, based on the comments that come in during the Path podcast, say that 5 times fast, I'm going to select a winner and send out to the winner a pocket path, a nice visor, and a pocket path training tool, as well as a rookie pocket path. You're going to be able to see some of these rookie pocket paths making their way into various Little League organizations around the country, something I'm working diligently on. But let's get started with our topic tonight. And our topic tonight is, a lot of parents are worried their student athletes are not, whether they're starting or playing at the varsity level. They're kind of spectators at this point. And so I get a lot of questions about, boy, oh boy, this is crowded. This whole college recruiting process seems overwhelming. And I just seem to be underinformed and I seem to be chasing. And yes, you are right. And so our 5 topics tonight are strictly based on your questions, your concerns. And I deeply appreciate you taking the time to send those to me. We live in a world now where college recruiting seems to be very overcrowded. And we hear all of these different people, these different resources, whether it's on social media, we hear it in our local community. And I want to, really begin to get you to understand as parents and as student athletes that yes, it may seem crowded. We hear things like portal and we hear things like JUCOs and we older, stronger physicality. Okay, so let's address these one at a time, all 5. And our first discussion point tonight, and I'm going to make sure that I read this from the parents directly. And college recruiting obviously is a much more competitive space than parents realize. Even though you find yourself to be overwhelmed, it's a tremendously competitive space on a much deeper level than you understand. And high school athletes, as I've said time and time again, are not only competing with their peer groups. And, while we are consumed as parents with looking to our left and our right, and maybe it's high school teammates or summer teammates or neighboring cities or towns or within the state, we're need to be aware that our student athletes today are competing with current college athletes as well as their peer groups. So we need to start there. That needs to be topic number one. And that means overall that we really need to understand as parents, topic number one, we do not want to chase the hype. We really want to plan for the fit. Now, I've said this for weeks and weeks, but it seems to be going it's not an attractive, it's not a sexy, it's not sizzle. When I say the word fit, a lot of parents are like, yeah, 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 blah, blah, blah. Okay, but what does fit entail? It entails having a myriad of options that are predicated way over and above baseball. It is important now more than ever for parents beginning this process to focus solely on the fit. Unplug baseball and really focus on the college fit for your student athlete. And what all of that entails, things such as geographics, academics, culture on the campus, coaching staff, coaching security, all of those things that need to go into making a confident choice in a decision. Recruiting is not about solely the individual focus on the athletic component. And now more than ever, that fit may be, now more than ever, NCAA Division III. I'll get to that in a little bit, but NCAA Division III. You need to begin to look at those on a much deeper level because of the balance, the strength academically, and the campus sizes, which tend to be smaller. They geographically, a lot of the Division III programs are located on the East Coast. But if we go out to the West Coast and we start talking about Chapman, Pomona, Pitzer, Wisconsin, Whitewater, we can go to Tyler, Texas, Tyler University, which is a great academic school in Texas. We even have schools such as Emory in Atlanta, Georgia. There are a lot of great Division III schools that run up along the eastern seaboard, not just in the Northeast. So when you start to think about Division III, a lot of parents get fixated on, well, they're in the Northeast, cold weather schools, elite academics. Well, that may be true, but there are a lot of great Division III programs. So it's very important when you're beginning your recruiting process. Fit has to do with things. Where is the academic, the libraries, the academic classrooms? Where is the cafeteria located? Also know where is the field or the complex where the amenities are located in relation to the dorms. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, when you play games or you get dropped off after a road trip, typically your student athlete is going to be walking home, and it can be late at night. Maybe they have an early morning class. There's a lot of dynamics to college. And I can tell you, when I'm working with families, I really try to get them to understand the bigger picture is more about your student athlete, your son or daughter, really finding that fit where they're happy on that campus, mentally, socially, culturally, academically, athletically, also from a nutrition perspective. All of these components that we don't take, like, for instance, Obviously, a lot of dorms now have snack areas, whether that's a microwave or maybe a mini refrigerator. But if you're looking for snack shacks or smaller little food boutique type cafes on campus, you want to know where those are located so your student athlete can have access to them. It's really important not to chase hype. In fact, chasing hype 9 times out of 10, you will lose more than you gain when you're focused on solely the athletic level. You really want to make sure of, instead of chasing a logo, you really want to find that dream school that fits your student athlete for 4 or 5 years, that offers them a 40-year kind of return on investment. And that really, the smart fit, when we start to factor in the athletic component, is, what's it going to take for me to get on the field? What's it going to take for me to have, a fun career, a good career, a productive career between the lines of play? And that comes from those families that have really taken it upon themselves to make sure that they are finding that fit that suits their student athlete, and not just from the academic or the athletic sizzle. Meaning, you may love that school academically, but it might not be a fit athletically, and vice versa. You may love that school from an athletic perspective, but academically it might not be a fit. So you have to find the athletic, the academic, and all of the geographic, the size of the campus, the culture of the campus, etc. Now, number 2 is just as big as number 1, and I found that a lot of parents kind of sent me this question, and the multi-plan or the multi-path component and all that entails. Now, the multi-path is what I call a safety net. You must have a safety net. That safety net allows you to incorporate, while you're in high school, preferably beginning mid to latter portion of the junior year in high school, going into the rising senior fall, rising senior summer. We want to find, do we need a postgraduate year? Is that something we should entertain? What are the various levels? NAIA, NCAA, potentially a JUCO, depending upon the academic prowess of our student athlete. We want to have a multi-layer to our plan. We want to give ourselves safety nets. Obviously, we want to have those schools, what I call those reach schools, where we may be trading that athletic ability for that academic excellence, something that maybe we outkick our coverage, but the athletics get us into the academics, or the student athletes' academics get us into the athletics. So we want to have that multi-layer approach. And that's a really big point too here to make. In other words, do we want to layer our plan with a postgraduate opportunity, an NCAA Division III opportunity, or an NAIA or NCAA Division I or II option that may be more desirable, but it may be harder to ascertain, and so therefore we want to have that multi-layered plan that allows us options, because options really create leverage. And if all things being equal, one of the things that we really want to have available to our student athlete is more options. More options create more opportunities. And I really believe that in the case of making decisions, one of the main focal points is understanding that college, from an athletic perspective, is older. Now, I've discussed this ad nauseum, and a lot of parents push back on, and I am not an advocate for everybody reclasses and everybody does a post-grad year. It's not for everyone. You may start at the Division III level. I have a great interview coming up with NCAA Division III Salve Regina, who's number 2 currently in the country. And Salve and Babson and several of these Division III programs find themselves being a launching pad for a lot of athletes that go on to play Division I. They're strong academic institutions. They play at a very, very high level. In fact, the lines are blurred. I've said this before, but NCAA Division III quite often can compete with many of the mid majors. Now, I'm not saying they can walk into Florida State or they could walk in, to a UCLA or Georgia Tech right now and compete. But a lot of the mid majors in Division III schools are on par, and so a lot of the Division III schools find themselves as a conduit between the academic and then the athlete maturing and then going to play Division I. So when you start to develop your multi-layered kind of safety nets, a lot of this for your student athlete will allow them to find out, okay, maybe I'm young for my class. Maybe I'm just turning 18, which, is pretty common. And so those parents need to understand college baseball is so crowded now for various reasons. The potential of the fifth year, as we discussed last week, the portal, the name, image, and likeness. It keeps athletes staying in college longer, and for the correct reasons, they're able to graduate, get a degree, generate income at the Division I level. But those 5 years, a lot of athletes utilize that time for graduate degrees, master degrees. So if you're going about this the right way and you're beginning to look at the complete picture from a wider lens, making sure that your athlete has the right mindset, the right physical attributes, the right skill sets in that time period. Meaning, if they're just turning 18, and the average age at the college baseball level or college athletics as a whole. Let's look at the University of Michigan. They had 5 transfers on, their starting lineup consisted of 5 transfers, one of which that was 25 years old. College baseball is very similar. Another interesting point for you to understand as parents that we don't take into our consideration the new era of college athletics. Look at the year over year spending at the college level, at the Division I level. Now, you may say, well, my athlete isn't Division I. Okay, but what I'm saying to you is those athletes, football, basketball, and obviously baseball will follow suit, have seen a year over year increase in name, image, and likeness agreements, collective agreements. And so that's going to have an effect on the fallbacks coming out of the portal. And it's important for you as parents, when you're setting up your safety nets, to take all of this information into consideration. What is achievable? What is the right decision for your athlete? And what is the pathway that your athlete really wants to follow? Is it a balance in having a complete and total college experience? Is it more academic orientated? Is it more athletic orientated? So this is something that we really want to pay attention to during our, the college selection process when we're putting these things together. I think it's really important for parents to understand that there are really a lot of levels to college athletics. And you need to understand over those 12 or 24 months, depending upon if you're starting as a high school junior and you're starting as a family to prepare for the college process as a junior, flexibility. Really do not chase the chaos of trying to make a quick decision to satisfy the social media or to be able to say, I made a decision. Slow it down. Choose the path. Don't chase the chaos. Now, the next one, point 3, I really think is instrumental with parents that are often finding themselves upset My student athlete isn't playing a lot as a junior. My student athlete didn't make varsity as a junior. I've had lots of boys on the podcast with me over the last several years, many of which that didn't play varsity baseball. Maybe they played 40 innings collectively over a 4-year time period. And while it is the exception and not the rule, they went on to have a great college career at the Division I level. Played baseball in the prestigious Cape Cod League. Development matters more than exposure. That is point 3. Development. We hear that word and we always are reliant on outside resources. We become reliant on instructors and coaches and summer ball, and we have various mentors. But what I would like to really emphasize, and I really want this point to be, understand where I'm coming from here when I say what I'm about to say. Failure or falling is life's greatest teacher. It's a great teaching moment. And let me say that again. Failure is life's greatest teacher. And when I say that to parents, they look at me, well, this is miserable. And I understand because, again, as I've said many times, in this world that we live in today, many families are chasing exposure. And oftentimes that leads to their student athlete being exposed. And we often do not spend enough time in the developmental phase. And we don't understand that between the ages of 15 and 19, I just had a great discussion with Coach Tommy Moffitt, who is the former strength coach for 20 years at LSU, won 3 national championships, baseball and football, and then now is at Texas A&M. And many could argue that he, Ben Fairchild, Eric Cressy, Mike Reinhold, they're the mentors within the strength world. And Tommy Moffitt really went out of his way to emphasize between the ages of 15 to 19, there is a lot of physical development, mental development, skill set development that is occurring over those 4 years. And as the body and mind are growing, so too will your skill sets for your student athlete. So if you step back from chasing the exposure with regard to college recruiting and you really take a significant step forward with regard to development, nutritional, meal prep, strength, skill set, and you place the onus more on your student athlete. And again, I go back to the journal that Coach Tuhig at the University of Hawaii suggested with regard to that journal. Now, I have a lot of parents that push back on the journal. My daughter doesn't have time for that. Writing in a journal. Take a look on a big league dugout. Take a look in a college dugout. You'll see athletes going over into the dugout, onto the seats or beyond the seats where the water and some of the helmet and the equipment are, and you'll see them pulling out a journal, and you see them opening it up and reading it. In many cases, you'll see them writing into it. In that moment of failure or disappointment or achievement, when you note it and you document it, you can go back into that moment and say, okay, I really need to work on these things and I need to build on these things. But when it comes to college recruiting, we oftentimes get caught up in the what travel team am I going to play for? What showcases am I going to? What camps am I going to? And I'm chasing exposure because if my son or daughter doesn't do that, we're going to get left behind. That could be nothing further from the truth. Because if you take that time and you really are focused on your developmental process, sleep, hydration, meal preparation, nutrition, strength, diligence with regard to skill set. Now, I had a parent ask me once this week, and I'm going to mention this, and it may seem trivial. I have a student athlete that I've worked with since the age, two of them, as a matter of fact, that I've worked with since the age of 12. Both of those boys can juggle. Now, I happened to be speaking with a parent this week, and they were asking me various physical attributes that would allow their student athletes to separate themselves from their peer group. Like, give me an idea of what my student athlete can be doing as an infielder or as a catcher, because he's a little of both, that he can do to separate himself. And I said, does your student athlete juggle? Now, they laughed. They said, as in a clown? I said, well, clowns juggle, but there are also other performers that juggle. But does your student athlete juggle? Well, what does that have to do with baseball? Do you know that that teaches eye-hand coordination? Do you know that juggling teaches the eyes to trust the hands, that the hands will be in the right place to perform the duty that needs to be done in order to not only catch and toss the ball back up, but to continue the movement pattern? You're not looking at the balls when you do that. You're trusting that your eyes and your hands are working together. Now think of a double play transfer at second base. Now think of a catcher having to receive a baseball. Think of a third baseman being a reactionary position and having to transfer the glove and the ball. Small, minute details within development are going to matter much more than you as parents trying to chase exposure. And when I get these types of questions, while they seem overly simplistic, I can assure you that if you implement these types of small pieces to a puzzle, think of your son or daughter's entire youth experience in all facets of life as a jigsaw puzzle, and you dump the puzzle out onto the table. And I'm not talking about the big pieces of a puzzle that can take 30 minutes. I'm talking about the real small pieces to a puzzle that, may have thousands and thousands of pieces, and you dump them in the middle of a table and you begin the process of putting together your puzzle. Sometimes it requires you or your student athletes to get up and walk away because they're pressing and they might need time to maybe visualize the puzzle in a different capacity. If you think about the puzzle does not come together in a day, in a week, in a month. Sometimes it can take an extraordinary amount of time, but it requires you as a family to view the puzzle from different vantage points. Maybe stand up, maybe sit down, maybe look at it from the left side, maybe look at it from the right side. The pieces to your student athlete's puzzle are going to be put together at their pace. No one is putting together a puzzle at the same pace. It's not a race. It's not a race. Don't chase when it comes to exposure. Now, number 4, and this question came in so often that I really felt like tonight I really needed to emphasize this. I have said this several times over the course of 5 years, but parents' academics matter. Now, I have spoken with so many coaches over the last 3 weeks, and each coach, to a man or woman, I do speak with softball coaches, soccer and lacrosse coaches, and they say academics create leverage. The better the academic profile, the better odds of aid, aid, financial merit money, scholarship money, access to certain specific majors, i.e., business schools. Also, it shows coaches a disciplined, a well rounded athlete. Now, when I say this, I get a lot of parents that say, well, my student athlete has an academic, a learning disability. My youngest son had that. And he attended Lawrence Academy that addressed that, and then Vanderbilt. He now has a degree. He has 2 college degrees, one from Vanderbilt and one from Baylor University, and a graduate degree. And my point to that is academics, whoever your student athlete is capable of being and or becoming, You want to be an advocate for study habits, time management, being a proactive academic rather than a procrastinator when it comes to academics. Academics create leverage within college recruiting, and yet we don't hear that enough. What we hear is a focus on exposure, camps, showcases. Let's spend the money here, let's spend the money there. When in reality, sometimes it's best not to spend money and overemphasize the athletic and really kind of find balance between the athletic and the academic. Maybe a peer tutor, maybe a test preparation. The ACT and the SAT. Many schools are test optional. Many schools are getting away from test optional. Understand that over the next 2 years, as we've discussed with regard to the 5 years of eligibility, with regard to the ramping up of the athletes being older, understand that athletics will be a separator. And so, if your pathway to college can be enhanced and you're able to create stronger leverage via the academic pathway, that gives your student athlete an advantage and oftentimes a significant advantage. The role that academics play oftentimes gets lost. But yet, a college coach typically will ask within the first 2 minutes, whether it's to someone such as myself, a high school coach, a travel coach, a liaison between a high school or a travel team. Oftentimes, a college coach will say, what type of grades, what type of academic profile does the student have? What can you tell me about them academically? What they're looking for there is not necessarily, hey, straight A's and a 1600 SAT. No, they're looking for a separator because oftentimes, if two talented students come before an admissions office or a college coach, who do you think they're going to take between the better prepared academic student is going to get a little bit of lift there. And, when we start talking, I get this question a lot. Well, my son's going to play in the SEC or the ACC. Timeout. Have we looked at Vanderbilt, UVA, Miami, Notre Dame, Wake Forest, Duke, Stanford, USC? I could go on and on. Have we UC Irvine? Have we looked at a lot of these schools, Northwestern, Tulane? Have we University of Texas, Texas A&M? I had a parent say to me, not from Texas, well, Texas A&M, they're in the SEC. How hard can they be? I have a very talented student athlete that was a high school All-American majoring in business and attended Texas A&M Business School. That athlete is now at Cal Berkeley. Said that Texas A&M Business School was brutally tough. And he was only one of two student athletes that entered as a freshman and got into the business school. So the role of academics cannot be taken lightly. And oftentimes, I will tell parents, when you are a freshman or sophomore in high school, A's and B's will always play. Be sure to do a progression based academic. Don't chase the AP or the honors as freshmen. Don't try to overload the student athletes unless you know 100% that your student can handle it academically. But make sure your student athletes are not overwhelmed coming out of the gate. Case in point, I have a young man that is an elite academic and right-handed pitcher. Got a C plus as a sophomore, a C plus in an AP class. That's going to negate, one or two of the Ivy League schools. So it's important to understand that the process athletically, when you're getting into that junior and senior year and you're beginning to look into colleges, that you begin to understand that academics play a significant role with regard to the recruiting. Now, the last one and this is number 5, I always try to tell parents that you need as parents to understand this process requires framework. I get a lot of parents that will ask me, "Oh, is this recruiting company good? Is that recruiting?" It has nothing to do with a recruiting company. I often tell parents what I do when I'm working with families is create an individual framework for your student athlete. Meaning, we can't just go construct a house without a foundation. We can't construct a house without doors and windows. We obviously can't construct a house without a roof, without a kitchen, without bedrooms and bathrooms and so forth. College recruiting resembles, and it takes an architect. And I mean this sincerely. You have to have the framework as a family to know how you're going to approach your student athletes' college decision. It's not a blanket, here's a piece of paper, everybody follows this piece of paper, everybody else follows this. It's really an individual approach, and the framework that this takes for parents is something extremely critical, meaning we have to take a deep breath. We have to find the right path, the right pathway for our student athlete. And we have to truly create a true top to bottom, 1 to 10, 1 to 20. And we have to check off each box before proceeding to the next box. As I see the questions starting to come in here, when I say framework, I mean this from every fiber of my being. And I want you to know that every single athlete I've ever worked with, 9 times out of 10, we maintain a friendship during the course of 10, 20 years. And that framework, every step of the way, some is met with turbulence, some is smooth, some is really, we have to kind of, what I call, do a different approach, reapproach to the runway. We're coming in for a landing. That doesn't work. We have to go around again and really find our way back to the landing strip. And so when I'm starting to talk to parents, I want to find out, make sure, is the school the right fit? Is the event you're considering attending, is it really worth it? And are we headed to the right level for our student athlete? Is this level academically and athletically truly the right fit for our student athlete? How is this school going to help with development of my child athletically and academically? What is the support mechanisms, both in the classroom, out of the classroom, socially, etc.? Is this something that's helping our child move forward within their life? Meaning, is this college a progression-based opportunity for our student athlete? I don't want to create chaos. I want to avoid the chaos. I want to avoid the hype. I want to make sure that we're not chasing a crowded, the crowds don't necessarily indicate the right opportunity, meaning everybody's going this way. So we got to follow the crowd. Maybe we have to go the other way, maybe because that's the right decision. The recruiting world is extremely crowded. And, the biggest thing that I really want to emphasize is parents, you need to understand that the right path for your student athlete requires sometimes going against the grain, sometimes slowing the process down rather than speeding it up. If I feel overwhelmed, let me take my foot off the gas pedal and let's kind of take a deep breath here for a moment. And so what I want you to understand is this process with 2026 high school graduates and beyond, 27s, 28s, 29s, does not require families to kind of move with the herd. It requires patience. It requires guidance. It requires a true visual for you as looking in the mirror, an honest evaluations of all aspects for your student athlete. What type of personality are they? Where are they at within the academic, the athletic, the social? Are they young for their age? Are they older and more patient for their age? Do they take a more mature approach? These are the discussion points that really are part of the college selection process. So, in a world of portal chaos and JUCO graduates and older athletes and name, image, and likeness and the collectives and fifth years of eligibility and blah, 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 we often find ourselves getting to that junior year in high school and we're hyperventilating and we're like, oh my gosh, is my athlete going to have the opportunity because they really love to play the game? And again, I want to emphasize falling and failure, obstacles and hurdles. Now, let's talk about something: obstacles versus challenges. Obstacles, by whatever means necessary, we have to find our way up, over, around, under, through obstacles because they're a part of life. And while it sounds corny and it sounds cliche, but athletics are meant to teach a bigger lesson than just statistics or results. In fact, some of the best college coaches in the country will often look back and say, my favorite group of guys are the guys that created the family like brothers. They argued, they celebrated, um, they kind of were accountable for each other. They looked after each other. It's bigger than the statistics and the wins and losses. Coaches are judged on wins and losses, but when we're making these college decisions, who's going to help our student athletes become adults? Who's going to help our athletes become better prepared spouses, parents, future parents, business leaders, community members? That's about college experience. We're chasing the hype because the alphabet people want us to chase hype. They want us to chase rankings. They want us to get subscriptions and find out who's ranked better, what shortstop is ranked higher in the state. It's all subjective. At the end of the day, the college coaches are going to make their own decisions on who they feel are the best fits for their program, their locker room, their culture. And all of the points that we discussed here, the 5 points that we discussed here tonight, are going to matter. And so I really appreciate when parents are sending in questions and comments, and they're really, these questions mean a great deal to me. And I really want smart families win the college recruiting process, not by chasing, but by choosing, by having a plan, by having a process. They don't try to force a round peg into a square hole. Many student athletes that enter the portal are not there due to their own decision. They are there because it wasn't the right fit. Someone did somebody a solid and pushed them in a direction. And I really want parents to know that when it comes to college recruiting here in 2026 and beyond, you have to take the lead. You have to seek out the information, seek out alternative opinions, seek out processes for your child, your son or daughter. Do not leave it in the hands of someone that you don't really understand their method their method with regard to helping shape the college process. Now more than ever, fit over hype, academics over the chaos of chasing, meaning academics. Make sure it's a part of your student athlete's process. Also, make sure when you are going out, make sure you're watching the schools that your student athlete has interest in, whether it's via social media, YouTube, streaming. Watch games, watch practices. Take the time. My goodness, if you're going to spend 4 or 5 years of your life, go watch a practice of the schools that you have interest in. Go watch games of the schools that you have interest in. Ask questions of the current student athletes, of the current families. Ask questions. How does your son or daughter like this school? How does your son or daughter like the coaches? How are the amenities? How are the facilities? Carry a journal. Ask the questions that you want answers to. Always remember, one of the biggest parts of the college process is factoring in. You're not chasing the peer group that your student athletes currently are competing with and against. Your student athletes are going to be competing with the older athletes. And so, therefore, it's incumbent upon you to make sure that when your student athletes hit the foundation, hit the ground at the college they decide to attend, when they are freshmen, that they are mentally, physically, academically, culturally ready for everything that that campus is going to throw at your student athlete. Now, I want to wrap up. I want to say thank you to all the parents that continuously send in the questions. I want to say that The Path is going to become our new podcast. Again, comment. When you see this on YouTube, make sure you're entering a comment, and we're going to choose a winner that's going to receive a visor as well as a Pocket Path packet, that'll have the balls and the Pocket Path arm care training package. We're going to send that out to you. We'll announce a winner once a month. I want to also encourage, please share the channel. Would love to grow the community. It's simple. On your social media, whether it's Facebook, whether it's X, formerly known as Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, if you see a reel or you see a social media post, please share that within your community. Also, engage with the video. Thumbs up, subscribe. Please, my goal this year, between now and the end of 2026, really deeply appreciative of getting over 50,000. Now the goal is to get to 100,000, to get that little plaque that signifies that I have 100,000 subscribers. And that is something that I think is achievable with your help. And so I'm hoping that you can help with regard to engagement, sharing is caring, and also encourage people to subscribe. If you have a question that I can help you out with, walter@coachbeede.com. You can put a question in the comments section and any of the social media profiles or promotional pieces that you see. And again, I want to say thank you to everybody that submitted questions for this week. I hope this was a entertaining but also informational piece of content for you with regard to the recruiting process, not only in 2026, but beyond. Have a great week in baseball. Going to have a great college coaches corner this week. I encourage you to watch. And if you have any questions that you would like me to ask college coaches on any topic, please continue to send those as well. Have a great week in baseball and have a great night.